Welcome back to the Take Action News, everybody. David Shuster here. This is the segment when we talk with our friend Cliff Shuster from We Act Radio. Cliff, how you doing this weekend?
How you doing? You sound a little raspy there, David.
A little raspy. I think it's because of all the yelling at the TV and the radio. Because, Cliff, the Republican right-wing media has done it again. When we thought that they couldn't get any more crude and crazy and irresponsible, here comes Pete Santilli, who's a right-wing radio talker who clearly hates Hillary Clinton and seems to be encouraging or fomenting violence against her. Here's what he said just over the past week on his radio show.
Maine. I want her to suffer. Whereas people like you, who are rational and logical and lawful and constitutional, want to bring the death penalty to her by hanging for treason. I want the opposite. I want to shoot her in the vagina and to let her suffer right before my eyes on behalf of all of the people who have died at her hands.
So the Republican right thinks that Hillary Clinton lied, people died, therefore it's okay to have a radio host somehow threaten Hillary Clinton's life?
Right, and use profanity and talk about shooting her somewhere. I'm not sure where to begin with how inappropriate that is. Whether it's the Senate or House level, the Michelle Bachmans or Louis Gohmerts, whether it's their entertainment complex, I don't. These are cultists at this point. These people are not people that you can deal with. They're resentful, angry, bitter. They're the losers of society. I really don't know how else to put it. They have this chip on their shoulder where they hate everybody else, and I think the only reason they seem to be able to do it is for the fact that they were born. I'm not sure where that kind of hatred comes from, because quite frankly, when it comes to making choices to get people killed, George W. Bush should be in the Hall of Fame. When it comes to Katrina ignoring 9/11, Iraq, and the various other things, and I never wanted him to be shot in his private parts. That was never something I hoped for, either privately or publicly. So this gentleman. I also don't know. You, David. I'm somebody who's involved in the media. I'm a writer, and I speak on shows like this. And I'm very much a believer in the First Amendment. But I've asked friends of mine who are lawyers before, when does this cross the line? He also threatened President Obama on that show, and said that he should be. I think he said he believed that he should either be shot or hung for what he's done. Where's the Secret Service talking to this guy? And where's the responsibility when these guys say stuff like this? Why is that not fomenting riot? Why, when Alex Jones says stuff that he says, when Glenn Beck says things and it leads to a guy on a highway up in Northern California on his way to shoot people at the Tides Foundation, at what level are you held culpable for this? I'd really like to know, because, again, I believe in the First Amendment, but there's a point where you really are pushing the limits of that.
Well, thankfully, the Secret Service apparently did at least interview Mr. Santilli. The agency told Talking Points number the agency is aware of Mr. Santilli's comments and will take the appropriate follow-up action. But again, that just makes me even more infuriated, because to me, the idea that the Secret Service is having to waste time on these clowns, given all the other threats that are out there, is outrageous. And the other thing about it, Cliff, is I think you hit the nail on the head. We all have a right to free speech, but there's no right to have a radio show or to use, the public airwaves to spew your vile. And the idea that, that a radio station is continuing to broadcast, is continuing to carry this guy, is just outrageous.
Well, that's what it is. I'll say that two kind of answers there. One is, I couldn't agree with you more. That it's sad that they would have to waste their time on this clown, but he is a clown. Let's be clear. But we're in a society right now, where groups like, frankly, the Republican Party itself, the Tea Party, the NRA, other groups have preyed on people's worst fears and paranoia to get them riled up and support their agenda. So you've got a lot of people on edge. You've got an African American president and a lot of hatred towards him just for that fact. And so you have to, that's kind of the question I was asking, because Santilli may be a complete imbecile. In fact, he is. But there are people listening to him that are unhinged and have easy access to weaponry. And that's it, is that he has no right to a radio show. But I also want to know, when is it that I can't yell fire in a crowded theater? When does that apply here? When is it that issuing terroristic threats doesn't apply here? And again, I guess I would need to talk to a lawyer to understand that. But I think when you get to the point where you're fomenting violence, where you're making threats against people, I don't see that as free speech anymore. There's a point where that kind of stuff passes free speech, quite frankly.